Hey folks, it's the Car Chick, and welcome to a special edition of Car Chick TV called Lessons from the Racetrack. For those of you who've been following me, you know that I've had a really crazy year with racing cars and engines blowing up and just all sorts of really great experiences with the concept of failure. But today we're talking with a driver who is not only a champion, he is a 3-time Global Rallycross champion, 2-time World Drifting champion, 4 times X Game gold medalist, and the host of America's Top Gear. You guys know it's Tanner Foust, and he is absolutely my favorite driver, not just because he has mad skills behind the wheel, but because he has built his career from scratch. He's a self-made man, and as entrepreneurs, I wanted to share his story. So we're gonna go find out exactly how he built his brand to where it is today. So come on, let's go into his garage. Hey, we are here with Tanner Foust. For those of you who don't know him, he is one of the most accomplished race car drivers, and as my fans know, my very favorite driver. But I'm not a Tanner Foust fan for the reasons that a lot of people are. You know, most people are fans because of your really impressive driving record, your mad skills behind the wheel, and what you've accomplished in television. But I'm a fan because of what you have accomplished as an entrepreneur. You didn't grow up in motorsports royalty. Your name is not Andretti or Earnhardt. You really had to work hard and use a different skill set to get your career to where it is today. And so I'd like for you to be able to share with my audience, what's your story? How did you get to where you are, and the creative things that you needed to do to build your business?
It's been a pretty long process. First of all, I appreciate the intro. I don't know if I deserve all that, but I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a process. I was a pre-med student looking to go into the family business, which was medicine. And I got a job in college for an inventor, inventing amusement rides.
That sounds awesome.
I was, you know, 1 part guinea pig, 1 part shipping guy in the back, and 1 part took care of the parrot. You know, so there was like a lot of different parts to that job. But fundamentally, I got addicted to the idea of working for yourself and doing what you love to do for a living. And this is a guy who loved skydiving, and he invented amusement rides about skydiving.
Oh, cool.
That simulated that feeling. And so I started looking into racing. I got a job as, I guess, trying to understand the business of motorsport. I got a job selling sponsorship at Pikes Peak International Raceway.
Marketing experience is always key.
Yeah, and it was critical to learn really what makes the motorsports world go around, because you see stickers on a car and you think, oh, that sponsor's paying for money to put their sticker on that car and drive around the track. And it's almost always not the case.
Right.
You're really dealing with people, and it's really a business is just a people environment. So it's knowing what people need in order to do better at their jobs, and how you can help them with their jobs of you know, selling Rockstar or selling cars or whatever. And the business of motorsport, I think, is fascinating, and I really did get into it pretty heavy. But I have always kept the core of what I love about it, which is driving cars. I make car noises on the way here in the rental car. I was making car noises. So I just love to drive.
I was doing that too, actually. I have a rental car today too.
I wish it was louder, so I was helping it out. But there's, yeah, so that's what it, for me, it's really just been baby steps. Not to quote What About Bob, but it's just been baby steps, learning about the business of motorsport and learning what people need in order to get promoted in their jobs, and how I can help with that and make it mutual beneficial.
I remember reading somewhere, and this is what inspired me and influenced me in my career this year. I read that you had even wrote your own press releases to help promote your sponsors. What are some of the real specific things that you did to get sponsors to get on board with you early on in your career, before you had this giant brand and worldwide recognition to be able to promote things like Rockstar?
Let's see. Early on, I was doing road racing, and so I was in a Spec Ford Racer, which was
nice and slow.
Yes, nice and slow, and it's club racing, so everybody kind of paid their own way.
Right.
But if I had a sponsor with a battery company, and I had a couple little sponsors here and there, just people that were helping out in a very low level, but I provided them with photos and press releases, which they really weren't used to at a club level,
Right.
because that was generally something, if they had to tell their boss what fun stuff they were getting involved in, they had to make the material and give it to them.
Right.
And so if I ever saw an example of what they had put together for their boss, and I could make something really similar, and then all of a sudden I'm a turnkey option that sort of does part of their job for them, and it doesn't cost much money, and so it just sort of greased the gears on making it easy to come back and work with me the next decision-making time.
So they weren't really sponsoring a race car driver in as much as they were outsourcing a piece of their marketing plan.
Which is what we're doing here. Yes, that's really, I mean, even when you get into certain sponsors have different things, where Rockstar deals with athletes, and in my case with driver, where they stick with the people, and Rockstar is one of those interesting companies where they don't look at the broad band of sports and say, okay, we are going to stick to this and this and this. They look at the 20 or 30 or 60 athletes that they have connections with, and then those athletes say, hey, this is something that's cool, that's up and coming, I'd love to go do this. And so I was doing drifting, and I saw a rallycross video and just went to them and said, hey, this rallycross stuff in Europe is awesome. I mean, it's never been in the States, no American has ever done it in Europe. I think that was in 2009, let's go over there. And they'd never heard of it, of course.
Right.
But certain brands are capable of saying, well, if you think it's cool, we'll give it a shot and we'll go out there and try it. And they've been the first to drifting, the first to rallycross, and that's how they get, kind of get into the sports early, is by letting the athletes kind of tell them what's the next up and coming thing.
Well, that's a smart thing in business. As an entrepreneur, we always have to think outside the box and setting yourself apart and doing things that are different. You don't necessarily want to do what everybody else in the market is doing, because then you don't stand out. And when a company has the courage to be on that cutting edge and say, hey, let's give this a try, because marketing's a test, so what the heck, let's give it a try. And so
yeah, it's a risky.
That's what it's all about.
Other companies are not so risky, but it's it still is it's a big benefit to get in there first.
Right.
If it works. And my plan has been, since I didn't have the money to race road racing, there's a lot of people that would love to race cars for a living. Yes. And you get out there and you say tires cost how much? I just figured they only are going to last for an hour. I figured they were super cheap, but they're not. And
no.
fuel is more, everything is so much more expensive.
Yeah, it's $1,000 an hour for tires.
Yeah, well, and so then you get, it just, when you really break it down to the numbers, it's a lot of packs of gum, which is how I used to always determine how much something cost.
A lot of packs of gum.
So, so I got into kind of the sports, the path less traveled with rally racing. And then with drifting, I learned a lot about how it's really marketing people were coming to the drifting events, because it connected to a young market.
Right.
And
they want to get those customers early and try and then keep them as they get into that generation that is spending that money.
Yes, and there's this huge giant pool for big companies of marketing budget to accomplish their marketing goals, and there's a couple little drops over here that are motorsports. And but there's a lot of really expensive rigs and teams fighting over those few drops.
Right.
But if you can figure out how to make marketing sense and a brand image sense to a marketing plan of a big company, then you can have access to much more liquid. And so
right.
it's that's what drifting did, is it connected with millennials, and it made it. You would see the tire companies. You would see the CEO or the U.S. president of these tire companies coming, not just a motorsports guy. It was like the head of the whole company coming to see what's this craze. They want to know what's going on. And so I learned quickly to focus on what really can change an image of a brand. And with drifting, was able to get on top of that pyramid when it was pretty small, and then a lot of companies fueled the fire to build the pyramid up. And Rallycross got on top of this pyramid when it was small, and then a lot of companies are showing up and fueling the fire to build it up. And so it's not easy to stay near or at the top of the pyramid that whole time, but that's the struggle. It's a lot easier to stay there than it is to start from the very bottom.
Well, and that's what business is all about. You've got to struggle to get to market first, capture that customer base and that market share, and then, okay, now that you're at the top, what do you do? Because you can't keep doing the same things you've been doing to stay there. You have to continually change and do things different.
Yeah, innovation is strangely, it is an important part of the different sports that I've chosen. with rally racing, drifting, and with rallycross. They're fresh enough, rallycross being the oldest because it was in Europe for 45 years.
Right.
But our rules are different, our tracks are different in the US, so innovation is an important part of staying at the top. And moving to Andretti this year with Volkswagen, the tires are different, there's a lot of different things going on, and we have had to bring in fresh minds from other motorsports, from IndyCar and other motorsports that have innovated in a different way than the 45-year-old time-tested method had proven, and it's been really successful. So I do like that part about the newer sports tours, is just the ability to innovate.
So at what point in your career did you realize that you had a brand? Did you start out consciously building the Tanner Foust brand? I mean, you've got a name that's just perfect for it, with the Go Fouster and Life in the Foust Lane. Did you intend that, or did it kind of sneak up on you?
All not my ideas, actually. I think I realized that maybe it was insecurity in business. I realized that I really had to have a multi-dimensional portfolio in the motorsports world in order to feel job security. Because without having kind of dad's checkbook there to catch me if I had a couple bad years.
Good point.
Or or if one contract went away, what do? You're done racing, and then you literally don't have a job, and you have no skills for another job. Really. So maybe it was just flat out insecurity in the motorsports world that got me to get into TV, into the business of motorsport, the racing itself, and stunt driving for films and commercials and things like that. So having kind of a diversified portfolios help. If one side of the business is fading away, the other ones have more time to pick up, and vice versa.
Right, it's your different verticals, your different multiple streams of income, which is important for any business and any entrepreneur to have, because you never want to put all of your eggs and all your revenue in one basket.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't go in with a plan like that, though. So I sort of, I worked in a ride and drive industry, which is a marketing industry where you just sit right seat. You exercise marketing goals for manufacturers and kind of parking lots and things around the country.
Yep.
And but it's a lot of fun, and you meet a lot of people in motorsport. You talk a lot of business and things like that. But I never really, mapped out a plan. I just thought, you know what? This is my catcher's net, right? This is my net right here. I could always bounce and fight into motorsport, and if it doesn't work out, I can always come back here and at least make a living to figure out another career, be an architect or something like that. So I just started kind of doing more and more racing, and once I got into TV, I realized that you could maybe establish a bit of a brand and have the TV help to get the sponsorship for racing, and have the racing help to get the jobs in the movie stunt driving, and have the movie stunt driving kind of build a more interesting resume to help with the racing. So you can make kind of a circle out of it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That makes sense.
And that sort of happened slowly. It wasn't like, this is how I'm going to spend my time for the next 10 years.
Right. So one of the big premise of my book and speech I do on Lessons from the Racetrack, it's about the concept of racing cars is a lot like running a business, and running a business is a lot like racing cars. Even the best people are going to fail at least 80% of the time. In motorsports, that ratio may be a little bit higher, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
But it's how you face those failures and what you do with that other 20% is truly what defines you and ultimately determines your success. You have had a little bit of a challenging season this year in Rallycross. Let's say that there have been a few races that have had less than optimal outcomes.
Yeah, no, it's been the hardest start to a year that I've ever had, really. And it's with 2 rough rounds in GRC. And yeah, it's hard to pick yourself up from those. You fundamentally, well, I have 2 things I guess to say about that. One is I learned in school, in a statistics class, that every time you flip a coin, you have the exact same chance of getting either side.
Right.
And so even if you flip a coin 10 times and it says tails, your 11th time you have the exact same chance of getting heads and tails again. There's an emotional stigma to, oh, I've had tails 10 times, that means the next one's got to be heads. There's some emotion to that is not relevant. And in racing, every time you come to the track, you can just start over with the same chance. You have the same tools that you had the last time, and you have the same tools you had the time before where you won. So
that's a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way.
People talk about momentum and this and that, and I'm sure people feel something like that. For me, it's much more about every time I show up, I just make sure that I'm doing the best I can for that track on that day. However, when it happens multiple times in a row, it can be difficult to avoid that feeling that, well, what am I doing wrong? Am I not focusing enough? Am I not eating enough bran, or whatever? So
need more protein,
yeah.
Need more Rockstar.
Yes, exactly. And so that's, for me, I've focused on just the exact next event, just like the next flip of the coin, starting from absolute zero. And statistically, things came back around as they would, because we have done our research with the Andretti team and with Volkswagen. We've done all of our research. Our ducks are in a row.
Right.
And so, if things don't work out your way one time, they can work out your way another time. And so the last 2 events I've won. So I will.
Yes, you had a phenomenal, very decisive win in New York last week, and another spectacular one before that in Finland.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd like to keep doing more of that. Here we are at a new track, totally new service, and so there's a lot of conversations to be had about what needs to go on with the cars on this track and this thing, but it's literally just standing with a brand new coin and just have to give it the absolute best shot for this track on this day with this weather that you possibly can.
I think that's great advice, because in business, and I think salespeople and entrepreneurs who we are, salespeople, you make 100 sales calls and you keep getting no, but you realize that every time you pick up that phone, it's a totally new chance. Right. And if you have learned your lessons from why did you get the no's before, why did you have those failures, it's all just a test so that you can improve every single time, and then hopefully get that more consistency and work out the system for what that success looks like.
Yeah, and for sales, I mean, I guess we're all in sales to a certain extent, but there's, seems like once you have a technique or strategy or system that works, and sales does have to do with confidence and does have to do with certain things, as driving does also, so there are some tight analogies there. But once you know that system has worked before, yeah, if you do get a few failures, it would be important to not suddenly dive off the path that has worked historically. Just because of the emotional response to a couple no's. Right. So it does make sense to have that kind of stability and confidence to know that every single time you up a call, you have just as much of a chance as getting a sale as you did the last 10 times you actually sold something.
Yeah, and I think another point that you just touched on was you have a team. You have this incredible group of people surrounding you to support you, both logistically with making sure that the car is right and figuring things out and what's going to work and what's not going to work, but also to have that emotional support. It's like, okay, new track, new race, we're going to do it this time, everything's going to be great. And a lot of us solopreneurs, that's tough because sometimes it's just us in the office working on our own, and so it's important to have a team to surround yourself with to give you the support that you need, because we don't have all the answers and we don't feel strong and confident and successful every single day. So I think that's a really good point.
Getting the right people, of course, is the hardest part.
Oh yeah.
And even in the short career that I've had a lot of different people involved, and there's from a car standpoint, I mean, these guys, there's enough races in this country and enough different disciplines that the good mechanics really filter themselves to the top.
Makes sense.
And a team like Andretti with that name and that location in Indianapolis, and they can scrape the best ones off the top and keep them in the company. When it comes to management help and things like that, I mean, if they don't come to you and you get lucky, then I don't know how you find those. I mean, I know there's a lot of services.
It's hard, yeah.
To find managers and social media help and this and that, but but in any case, yeah, of course, being confident in who you have doing your work and is a critical part of setting yourself up for success, for sure.
So what is next for Tanner Foust? We have any new Foust Edition fun things coming out? What projects are you working on?
Well, new with Volkswagen this year, and Volkswagen's a big beast. It's one of the largest, probably soon to be the largest manufacturer in the world.
Wow.
And So when you get into big beasts, things seem like they would move pretty slowly, but they're actually not. We're actually moving pretty fast with VW, and I would love to get more involved in the actual street car side of Volkswagen and their R line, a lot of their performance lines that they have coming out in virtually every car that they sell. And so that's one thing with me, is getting more connected with VW as a company in the US specifically, and seeing what we can do with the brand there. For such a big brand, it has some of the oldest and greatest stigmas tied to some of their cars, so it's a real opportunity for somebody like me to get in there and put my performance twist on the suspension, or how I would love for the car to drive, so that's a big thing for me. We have apparel and stuff like that, and that hasn't been the major part of my business. It's just something that's been almost a thing to have more interaction with fans. It's not really a big money-making thing.
Right. But it helps promote the brand, and that fan base provides the customers for your sponsors.
It does. It's an important thing to do, and it's an important interaction to have. So they can come when you meet them, they have your shirt on. It's very cool, and you can't help but really appreciate the effort that went into going online and finding it and buying it and all that kind of stuff. So it's very cool. There are a lot of guys here, Deegan and Block. These guys make much more money selling T-shirts than I make doing everything. And there's and that's a fascinating job. That is the job, though, that they have, is selling T-shirts. And while it would be nice if it was a byproduct that I didn't have any time that I had to spend on it that went into massive amounts of T-shirt sales, those two are very talented at that type of branding, and they spend a massive amount of time on that.
Right.
So it is a job.
I like your job better, though. You spend more time on the car.
Yeah, but we all have really good jobs. There's no doubt about it. We fight hard to make sure that it's just like that guy who just walked by and doesn't take your job. No, but no, we do have good jobs. But yeah, so for me, I'm going to get deeper ingrained into some of the fibers here with VW. Working more now. We're going to have the Beetle coming out for a rallycross car soon. So there's going to be a lot of work both in Europe and here in the States with Andretti and VW to get that dialed. And a few more races in the World Rallycross Championship, Turkey and Canada coming up.
That'll be fun.
That's the remainder of my year.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. We've learned some great lessons about marketing, about sales, building relationships, and keeping the right mindset to overcome the challenges that naturally come with both racing and business. So thanks, everybody. Until next time, this has been Lessons from the Racetrack with the Car Chick and Tanner Foust. We'll see you next time. Drive safely.